We've been consulting on the issue of tomorrow's program, closing acts. Just to throw to us the idea that it may not be feasible to actually come back here and do the closing act. So we may have to brace ourselves for a longer period this evening. That means if we can please try to be sensitive to the time, that will be helpful. Yes, I see microphone 3.
Thank you for this observation, Madam Moderator. Not because I can't sleep without a dinner, I can sleep without a dinner. But I am suspecting that we are going to be late tonight here. So it will be preferable if you can, upon the request of the House, postpone the dinner at the hotels from 7 to 8:30. So if we will be late, people who can't sleep without dinner can eat their dinner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I see your cards that we do try to keep time but not plan to have a session in the morning? Thank you very much. This is the way we would like to have the papers, the committee documents come to us. We want to start with the public issues, policy reference, program committee, finance, nominations. And then at the very end, we would like to just have a short session for the members of Central Committee. It will be very short, not more than 10 minutes, to look at staffing matters. So that would be the process for this afternoon, if you agree. Public issues, please. And those of you who are reporting, could you make sure that you share? The other point I'd like to make, if you have any editorial matter, please refer it to the committee so that we can look at, especially those rapporteurs who are supporting us, the staff, so that we can edit it in time, but not in the plenary. Thank you. Microphone 1.
Sorry, moderator. In this, where we're approving a final document, we need to have the final wording.
Yes.
It can't go back to rapporteurs at this point.
No, but I'm suggesting that because the documents have been circulated, you are right, offer something that is edited, but not expect all of us to edit here, please. That's what I'm requesting. The two last issues will be some discussion on the staffing, but also a few minutes to offer for any comments of what we've just done before lunch. So public issues, where are you? If you are not ready, can we move to program?
He's here, he's ready, he's just getting his thing.
Have the documents with you. Moderator, public issues, can you come? Yeah. we will want to have 2 recorders to assist us with the decisions we make. We are in a decision-making session. It's both hearing and decision-making. So we will need 2 people who can offer or will propose, if you allow us. We are asking for Bishop Alan Francis and the Most Reverend Philip Aspinall to help us record the decisions, please, if you don't mind. Thank you. Could you come to the front? Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I will then hand the microphone to the Vice Moderator, Bishop Svensson.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right. Your Eminence, Metropolitan Nifon, would you like to begin with us on the report of the Public Issues Committee?
Thank you, Madam Moderator, with joy. You know why? Because we've been working very, very hard. Because at the beginning, you frightened us when you gave us the task to deal with the issues that confront the world today, including our churches. So, the point is that because of the complications of the message text, a lot of amendments took place. We were a little bit frightened. And then we thought that we would like to assure you that we have worked so hard and with our conscience full of duty, full of prayer, spiritual dimension, whatever you like. We have come with almost perfect texts. So, I think that in our humble view, you have very little to add, but the additions and amendments are not excluded, please. You should not misinterpret me. Now, we have, that was just a little bit of introduction, you know. We have now the report of the Public Issues Committee. Allow me to read it. It's only 1 page and 2 lines. And then we have the famous statements. And then we shall see how we are going to handle them. Now, moderator and dear sisters and brothers, the Public Issues Committee, after reviewing the procedures for public statements, the public issues discussed both the moderator's address and the General Secretary's report. The committee also reviewed the compilation of actions on public issues. You see there the documents which we had, all of us in front of us, and the summary report of the meetings of the Commission of the Churches on International Affairs. In addition, the Public Issues Committee received revised and recommending texts on the following issues to the Central Committee for Action. So the statement on progress for peace on the Korean Peninsula, building a just and sustainable peace in Colombia, the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the situation in the Philippines, the solidarity with the people of the Democratic Republic of Congo, the statement on recent events in Gaza and Jerusalem, and the statement on the anniversary of the Poor People's Campaign in the United States of America and its continuing call. You will see what it's all about when you really read the text. In addition, the committee worked on a draft statement on the Christian presence in the Middle East, but became aware that the full range of perspectives on and approaches to this issue may not be adequately encompassed in the text prepared. The Public Issues Committee therefore offers the draft for the consideration of the Central Committee, with that caveat for the Central Committee to act on or to refer to the Executive Committee for action following further consultation. Several other issues communicated to the Public Issues Committee before the announced deadline for submissions could not be addressed in detail. This was primarily because of insufficient time or because further consultation with WCC member churches was considered necessary. The following actions are recommended in relation to those issues. The political situation in Brazil, referred to the General Secretary for further consideration. Number 2, the situation of the Anglophone minority in Cameroon, referred to the General Secretary for further consideration. 3, attacks by Fulani herdsmen in Nigeria. The Public Issues Committee encourages the Secretariat to continue and pursue its communications with the government of Nigeria on this matter. 4, the humanitarian crisis in Yemen, referred again to the General Secretary for urgent considerations. So, General Secretary, you have a lot of things to do from now on. Number 5, the 10th anniversary of the end of the civil war in Sri Lanka. Refer also to the General Secretary for a possible visit in 2019, the 10th anniversary year, in the context of the 2019 Pilgrimage of Justice and Peace, focus on the Asian region. 6, the situation in Nicaragua. Refer to the General Secretary for a possible visit this year in the context of the 2018 PJP focus on the Latin America and Caribbean region. 7, bioethics, genetic engineering, and artificial intelligence. Refer also this time to the Commission on Faith and Order for consideration in the context of its work on moral discernment. And 8, increasing religious extremism in Indonesia. Refer to the General Secretary for further consideration and a possible visit in the context, again, of the 2019 pilgrimage, focus on the Asian region. That was the first part of the report, and we still have, as I said, 7 statements which we are going to present to you. Now, the point is that you had those particularly statements and the text, you had them now for 4 days. You improved very much the text, and the committee took into consideration seriously everything. So I would like Peter Proof and then my cooperators to try to read each one of them. But, moderator, could I suggest that we first present the statement on Korean Peninsula? Secondly, just the actions? Oh, you are bringing good news to us. You know, because the actions is simply to approve them. Did you know that? Yes.
We don't read something not to approve, we read to approve.
So we read to approve. After we reading the statement, we approve, you mean, without discussion?
No, you read the actions to approve.
Where is the
action points at the end of each statement?
Yeah. Well. Thank you. I noticed 1 minute of relaxation and everybody is happy. So, But nevertheless, I want to have a break because it's a very good news. So,
Well,
Peter,
it's not quite good news yet, because His
Emma?
Eminence Metropolitan Seraphim is at the microphone.
Thank you very much.
The microphone too.
The paper is wonderful. I have just a comment. First of all, my point I'm going to mention doesn't mean that we don't trust 100% our Secretary General.
Thank you very much.
About the 8 points. After we say we refer to the General Secretary to add and to the leadership of the Central Committee, in brackets, moderator and vice moderators. I think is this what we agree during the debates and in the committees and everywhere, how next to the Secretary General to have always our moderator and the vice moderators. If one of them is not available, the other two to be, and also when he visits these important parts of the world, we are going to be very happy to see that he's accompanied by our moderator or one of the vice moderators. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Please.
Moderator, I understand that when you write General Secretary in text like this, it means the Secretariat with all our capacities available, but under my coordination and my responsibility.
So thank you for that,
Thank you.
and we'll make sure that's all clearly under advisement as we do. All right.
Moderator, allow me to invite Dr. and Reverend Emma Wittig. She belongs to the church in Wales, so it has a very good English, so that's why I asked her to read this. Please, Emma.
Thank you, Moderator. You've taken the paperwork away.
You don't have?
I'm beginning with the action points on the statement on progress for peace on the Korean Peninsula. If you are following, I commence at paragraph number 6. In this new season of hope for peace and reunification on the Korean Peninsula, the WCC Central Committee, meeting in Geneva, Switzerland, 15th to the 21st of June 2018, calls for the continuation of dialogue and the implementation of commitments between South and North Korea and between the USA and North Korea. Urges all members of the international community to engage, support and enable North and South Korea in the full implementation of the Panmunjom Declaration as the accepted framework for securing a sustainable peace on the Korean Peninsula and for the region. Commends the KCF and the NCCK for maintaining their relationship and mutual commitment to dialogue, exchange, peace and reunification, and encourages the KCF and NCCK to redouble their efforts in the context of the new opportunities created by the Panmunjom Summit and Joint Declaration. Calls for intensified ecumenical engagement between and with North and South Korean Christians in their pilgrimage of justice and peace. Encourages the WCC General Secretary to continue and accelerate the WCC-supported programme of ecumenical cooperation, exchanges, visits and contacts between North and South Korean Christians, accompanied and supported by members of the Worldwide Ecumenical Fellowship. Particularly encourages our renewed focus on the engagement of women and youth from both North and South Korea in ecumenical initiatives for peace and reunification on the Korean Peninsula. Urges WCC member churches and partners, especially those in North and South Korea, USA, China, Russia and Japan, to actively support and advocate for a peace treaty for the Korean Peninsula to replace the 1953 Armistice Agreement. Strongly affirms the commitment to nuclear disarmament and the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, expressed in the Panmunjom Joint Declaration and reaffirmed in the Singapore Summit Joint Statement in the context of the ecumenical movement's support for nuclear disarmament globally, in particular through the ratification and implementation of the Treaty on Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Calls for ecumenical cooperation rather than competition in responding to new opportunities for mission and diaconia arising from the recent political developments, and highlights the importance of the Ecumenical Forum for Peace, Reunification and Development Cooperation on the Korean Peninsula as an instrument for this purpose. Invites deepened mutual solidarity between the KCF and the NCCK in order to develop increased exchange and cooperation of civil society in the spirit of the Panmunjom Declaration. Requests all WCC member churches to pray for the realisation of the hopes created by the Singapore Summit and the Panmunjom Summit, for an end to confrontation and threats of armed force, for peaceful coexistence on the Korean Peninsula, and for the reunification of the divided Korean people.
Okay, this statement is properly before us. Are there any questions or comments? All right, if you're ready to be, all right, go to microphone 2.
I think the message of the international community is to have a peninsula without nuclear weapons. And here there is a reference, the reduction. But we cannot, as a WCC, to speak for reduction. And the voice of the international community is the paragraph 2, the last line. We are talking for, there is reference, yes, for the reduction of nuclear armed military. I think we have to be very specific. We are looking for a peninsula without nuclear weapons. Thank you.
Moderator, I'd like respectfully to His All Eminence that this idea is contained very well in the text. So we have taken care already of that. Okay, thank you.
All right, if you're ready, if you're ready to receive and approve this statement, will you show your cards?
Good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, moderator. I think we started very well. Now, because we are in a conciliar, you see, state of mind, I would like to ask Thomas, our friend, to come here because his father tongue is English. He will read, you know, the proposals for the building a just and sustainable peace in Colombia. Thomas?
So document GenPub 05.02 Colombia. I go directly to the actions. The WCC Central Committee meeting in Geneva, Switzerland on 15-21 June 2018, therefore, urges the government of Colombia to implement fully and without further delay all of its commitments under the accord with the FARC. Calls on the government and the ELN to remain firmly committed and engaged in the process of dialogue and negotiation to ensure that a peace accord is also reached to end the conflict between them. Appeals to all parties to refrain from returning to armed violence, but to remain committed to dialogue, negotiations, and a fully democratic political process as the only legitimate and viable means of achieving peace and promoting justice. Invites all members of the international community, all churches and all people of goodwill to support and encourage the government and the people of Colombia in the pursuit of justice through peaceful and fully democratic processes. Encourage strengthened ecumenical collaboration among the churches of Colombia in support of peace, justice, and human rights in Colombia. Urges WCC member churches to collaborate through the WCC to find the necessary resources and means to sustain and strengthen ecumenical networks and churches in Colombia in their work for justice and peace. Invites WCC member churches to join in ecumenical advocacy and accompaniment for the full implementation of the peace accord with the FARC, for the continuation and successful conclusion of the peace process between the Colombian government and the ELN, and for an end to violence and harassment against community leaders and human rights defenders in Colombia. Requests the General Secretary to explore ways in which the WCC can meaningfully and effectively observe, accompany, and assist the peace negotiations between the Colombian government and the ELN. And finally, proposes that the WCC and its member churches identify and offer expertise, experience, and other resources from within the ecumenical movement to support and strengthen the work of the Truth Commission established under the accord with the FARC as a key instrument for transitional justice and the healing of memories.
All right, this one is properly before you. All right, if you're ready to receive and approve this statement, will you show your cards? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, moderator. You know, it's a delight to look from here at this orange color. It's beautiful. Now, the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I would like now, because Peter should also do something, so I would like him to read.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Paragraph 7 of the text that is before you. In the year of the 70th anniversary of both the WCC and the UDHR, that is the acronym for the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the WCC Central Committee, meeting in Geneva, Switzerland, 15 to 21 June 2018, strongly reaffirms the commitment of the WCC to the principles of human dignity and human rights, and to the commitments expressed in international human rights law as codified in the UDHR and the family of international human rights treaties. Reasserts that international human rights law is an essential framework for the promotion, protection, and practical recognition of the God-given human dignity of every human being, including for women, children, people with disabilities, indigenous people, and for all people, irrespective of race or religion. Calls on WCC member churches and ecumenical partners to reprioritize human rights and active support for the legal instruments of international human rights law as a bulwark against injustice, oppression, occupation, and tyranny by the majority and the powerful. Proposes, in response to the new challenges confronting the legal architecture of human rights, a new process of ecumenical reflection and consultation on the relationship between international human rights law and scripture, theology, and Christian ethics, also engaging interreligious, civil society, governmental and intergovernmental partners in this process. The Central Committee invites the CCIA, the Commission on Faith and Order, and the Commission on World Mission and Evangelism to consider possible collaboration in such a process leading up to the next WCC Assembly.
All right, this one is before you, and I think we are going to hear from microphone 2.
I think when I say something, the most important is to record this in the minutes. I think we have to recommend strongly here all the governments and civil society to support the United Nations Human Rights Council, including the people of the United States.
I think that Metropolitan Seraphim says very good things all the time, and it's good. Now, I think, there is a blue card. Today I don't like blue cards, but I accept them with
Right.
love. Yes.
Yeah, and there's another one at microphone 4 too. So we'll hear what each of them has to say and then have you respond.
Okay.
I have Marianne coming from the Church of Norway, speaking in English. I have a question for the reassert recommendation, and I would like to propose or to ask if we should just stop the sentence after God-given human dignity of every human being, and not start naming some groups and at the same time not naming other groups.
Yeah, we'll hear all the comments and then we'll have the committee respond. So microphone 4.
Ann Riggs, Religious Society of Friends from the United States, speaking in English. I'm not going to press for any specific change for this document, but a general comment that it is necessary to reiterate some of the achievements of the past, and to simply say, oh, well, we talked about just peace, so we don't need to speak of that anymore, of course we're doing it, is not helpful for building the continuity across time. In Faith and Order, we talk again and again of scripture, tradition, and traditions, a great achievement of a conference in 1963, because it continues to yield important fruit. And in these documents, it would be appropriate to mention, to utilize the just peace achievement. A conflict between churches, between justice and peace, is a church dividing conflict. People have been killed over the differences that they've had about prioritizing justice and prioritizing peace. And this was a very serious achievement to have been able to heal such a deep set of wounds. So it is troubling that it just never seems to be reasonable to reiterate the achievements of the past. Well, then we'll never be moving. We need to reiterate, reappropriate, teach to new readers. Thank you.
Microphone 2.
Thank you, moderator. I just think in the context of this document and what's happening in the world, there would be mileage in referring to Articles 18 and part of 19 of the Declaration, in particular that refer to religious freedom and freedom of worship as well as to embrace or change religion.
Microphone 3.
Thank you, moderator. I'd like to refer to the paragraph, the one before the last, that starts with calls on WCC member churches. I understand that the paragraph is a protection to the oppressions of minorities. But in many parts of the world, those perpetrators of injustice and oppressions are minority and not the majority. So the word by the majority and the powerful, it could be misunderstood. Thank you.
Microphone 2.
Thank you, moderator. Rudolf von Sinner, Education and Ecumenical Formation Commission. This seems to me to be a formidable way of the various commissions in the World Council to work together, and 3 of them are named in the last part on the proposals. Can we also include the 4th one, which is the Commission on Education and Ecumenical Formation, in that point there? Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, if the committee would like to respond.
Okay, I will start with the last one. I think that we could add without any problem the Commission of Education. So that is solved. Now start with number 1. The question is that the proposal reasserts the international human rights law and so on, given human dignity of every human being, including and so on. I'd like to inform you that some people insisted to mention these ones. The people wants to make a longer list. Now, if we have to choose between the two, I think we should stop there. The recognition of the God-given human dignity of every human being, full stop. So maybe that is the solution. What the House is thinking, I think is okay. That is solved. Now, I think that the second, if you don't have a clear proposal, then we shall think about it as quickly as possible and see to what extent we could accommodate your suggestions. As to Archbishop Angelos, declaration number 18 and 19, we could very well, Peter, and that we could add and find out and make a reference of the UN declarations. Very good. And now number 1, Peter, would you like to, number 4 here, it was something.
Thank you. To the concern expressed in relation to the second last paragraph, action point, about referencing the majority and the powerful, I take very well the observation and the potential for misunderstanding. But just to explain that this text was trying to speak into a current moment of crisis in the human rights movement. And it has to do with the prevalence of populist politics in different parts of the world, in which majority perspectives are being mobilized to the detriment of minority communities. But I understand the point about the potential for misunderstanding. So if it is the will of the House, then I think the easiest solution is simply indeed to delete that reference to the majority and the powerful and to put a full stop after tyranny.
Okay. I think we agree. Now, some more orange, please. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. In that case, Madam Moderator, we finished with this one too, and we have to go to the situation in the Philippines. I would like Emma to come back and read it in a wonderful way. Go on.
Thank you, Moderator. I begin at paragraph 8 of the document you have in front of you. In the light of the above and in the spirit of the pilgrimage of justice and peace, the WCC Central Committee at its meeting in Geneva, Switzerland, 15 to the 21st of June 2018, expresses its prayerful solidarity with the Filipino people and in particular the indigenous peoples of the Philippines during these challenging times. Urges the government of the Philippines to end the culture of impunity, order the investigation of all killings, and drop the Department of Justice's petition to declare activists as terrorists. Reiterates the Executive Committee's call for the lifting of martial law in Mindanao and for the indigenous people and others in the region to be allowed to resume their normal daily activities. Calls again for the resumption of the formal peace talks between the government of the Philippines and the National Democratic Front of the Philippines, including socio-economic reforms to address the landlessness, unemployment, corruption, repression, poverty and discrimination that have bred unrest, violence and a protracted conflict in the Philippines. Invites WCC member churches and partners to stronger ecumenical solidarity and support for the churches and peoples of the Philippines in the midst of the escalating crisis of violence, human rights abuse and impunity in the country. And lastly, welcomes the initiative for the International People's Tribunal for the Philippines being planned for the 17th to the 20th of September 2018 in Brussels to bring before the bar of international opinion the human rights situation in the Philippines in an attempt to end extrajudicial killings, human rights abuses and the culture of impunity.
Thank you. All right, this one is properly before you. All right, if you'll receive and approve. Oops, we've got somebody coming to microphone too.
again.
I think there is the lack of protection of the suffering children.
Could you repeat a little bit? I didn't get it.
Yes, when you refer, is the call again in the, let's say, corruption, repression, poverty, there to say, lack of protection of the suffering children, of the needy children, lack of protection.
Peter,
Social, economic, you know, the children unfortunately are the victims where there is this problem in countries suffering of dictators.
Yes, it's difficult to react immediately, but the question is that it doesn't fit here very well. But of course, the idea raised by Metropolitan Seraphim, as usual, is very good. But here it doesn't fit quite well, so it's so please accept that with orange. Thank you.
All right, if you'll receive and approve this statement, will you show your cards?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We go on. Colombia is coming. Congo. Sorry, I have so many statements that I...
You are lost.
Yes, a little bit, not more. I'm not lost altogether, just a little bit. Sorry. Now is the question of solidarity with the people and churches of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So I would like Thomas, our friend, to read the proposals.
Thank you, His Eminence. Well, this is the paragraph 10. The WCC Central Committee meeting in Geneva, in the second line, on 15-21 June 2018, reflecting on the midpoint of the pilgrimage of justice and peace between the WCC's 10th and 11th Assemblies, and with deepening alarm and concern for the deteriorating situation in the DRC, calls upon the government of the DRC to stop the death due to political intolerance, to protect its citizens from violent attack and harassment by state or non-state actors, and to respect fundamental human rights to assembly and to freedom of opinion and expression. Further calls on the government of the DRC to uphold the Constitution and refrain from worsening the crisis and provoking more widespread conflict and violence by further postponement of the elections. Appeals to all members of the international community, and particularly the Southern African Development Community, to strengthen their engagement for durable peace, stability, justice, development, and human rights in the DRC. Implores that countries and companies engaged in exploiting the natural resources of the DRC respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country and the human rights of its people. Urges all churches and faith communities of the DRC to work together against politically motivated violence and incitement to atrocity crimes, for a peaceful and fair election process, and for social and economic justice that provides a foundation for sustainable peace. And requests strengthen international ecumenical solidarity with the churches and people of the DRC in the midst of the current severe crisis, and support for their struggle for peace, for justice, and for dignity.
All right, this one is before you. If you're ready to receive and approve of this statement, will you show your... Oh, yes. Metropolitan, Your Eminence?
Who?
Me.
You mean Metropolitan Seraphim again? No. Good. You want to. Sorry, is Metropolitan Gennadios now.
For the first, what is the call? The first one. Please go up a little to the text. The text.
Calls upon, or what?
Yes, calls upon.
Yeah.
Calls upon, I think it will be better to say of the DRC to stop the killing, or the killing due to political tolerance instead of death.
Yes, I think it's very clear, well taken.
All right, in that case, now if you're ready to receive and approve this statement, will you show the card? Very good, thank you.
Moderator, I would like to inform you here now very seriously that we have changed and rechanged. We have written and rewritten the one recent events in Gaza and Jerusalem in order to harmonize all points of view. And we even asked one who knows everything about the Middle Eastern situation and the Gaza Strip, and that is Dr. Kavas. So we invited him in our committee, and he helped us a lot, and we improved the text in such a way as now I really have very serious hope for an invasion of orange cards. So, but before that just was their captatio benevolentiae. But now I would like Peter to read the proposals.
In addition to the appreciation of Dr. Kawas's participation in this discussion, I'd also like to express thanks to Dr. Soraya as General Secretary of the Middle East Council of Churches for her participation and support in this drafting process as well. Paragraph 5 of this text. The WCC Central Committee, meeting in Geneva, Switzerland, 15 to 21 June 2018, urges the State of Israel to cease all inappropriate military, especially live fire responses to non-violent, unarmed civilian demonstrations, affirms the international community's decision to condemn the disproportionate use of armed force against unarmed civilians as a clear violation of international humanitarian and human rights law, calls for an international inquiry into the events in Gaza and for those responsible for crimes under international law to be held accountable, appeals for the long-standing blockade of Gaza to be lifted in order to ameliorate the desperate conditions under which the people of Gaza have been forced to live for years, calls on the US administration to reverse its position regarding the status of Jerusalem, urges the State of Israel to stop the construction or expansion of settlements in the occupied territories and to desist from formal and informal confiscation of land belonging to churches and to Palestinian families and organizations, urges the members of the international community to exert their maximum efforts to promote renewed negotiations among Israelis and Palestinians for a genuine, just, and sustainable peace, implores all actors in the region to refrain from violence, from incitement to violence, from exposing children to violence and confrontation, from oppression, occupation, and injustice, and to invest instead in dialogue and negotiations as the only path to a just and sustainable peace for all people in the region, urges WCC member churches to support the heads of churches in Jerusalem in their efforts to preserve the Christian presence in the city of Jerusalem and the region, and to safeguard the holy sites and church properties and the status quo.
Thank you. Microphone 3.
Thank you, moderator. I have a question to the committee on the first paragraph, starting with urges. Is there such a thing as an appropriate military response to non-violent, unarmed civilian demonstration? Shouldn't the word inappropriate be deleted there?
Yeah, I'll have each of the ones make a comment, and then I'll ask for the response from the committee. So we'll go to microphone 1.
Thank you, moderator. That was exactly my comment. Thank you.
Microphone 2.
Carlos Pena, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. I'd like to offer a friendly amendment, hopefully a friendly amendment. at the end of the statement after the last urges, and one that reads as follows: recommits to interreligious dialogue and cooperation on the pilgrimage for justice and peace with Muslim and Jewish partners through the WCC and its member churches.
All right, we'll hear one other comment from microphone 2, and then we'll have the committee reply.
Thank you, moderator. I think we refer to the symptoms of a problem and not to the heart of the problem by referring just only to Gaza and Jerusalem. I was in some camp of refugees for Palestinians, and they have keys. I told them, you are 10, has not door. Why you have keys? This is the keys of my house. They got me out, and I'm still waiting to go back to my house. Since 1948, the international community failed to give international status to the Palestinian nation to have their own state. So this is the problem. How can WCC support the international community that it's time the Palestinians to have their own state like the one of Israel? The lack of support for the Palestinians to have their own state is a threat for the global security.
Microphone 1.
Thank you, moderator. I totally agree with everything here, but I'm looking from a pragmatic perspective because this is going out to the world community. There needs to be an addressing of the Palestinian authorities as well that does two things. First of all, legitimizes them as an authority, because we're only dealing with the Israeli authorities now in this statement. And secondly, calling them to also have a responsible role in the peace building and the reconciliation, so that the document does not look too skewed in one direction.
We'll hear from the committee.
Yes, so they were all, I think the first speaker to replace the word inappropriate, I think it's absolute to delete. I mean, that is accepted by the committee without any problem. And then the next one, Peter, would you like to come here and try to, for the recommendations?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. The proposal regarding an additional paragraph at the end of this text regarding interreligious dialogue and cooperation. We were given advance notice prior to this session of this text, and in consultation with the moderator of the Public Issues Committee, we felt that it could be accepted as a friendly amendment. So I think from the point of view of the committee, we can accept this text, and I have a handwritten version of the text in front of me. If I may, Mr. Moderator, also to speak to, in response to a couple of the other interventions which were calling for a broader address to root causes or to the wider political, other actors in the political context, I would like to refer the Central Committee to the very long bibliography of many policy statements that address different aspects of this situation over time. I think the WCC's perspective on this issue has been deep and wide and comprehensive over that period of time. We invested some effort last year to bring together a compilation, a summary of some of those key policy perspectives, and it is available online, and I think you will see that it covers the full terrain. The purpose of this text was to respond in a relatively timely manner to more recent specific developments, specifically, as you will see from the preambular text, to the latest tragic events in Gaza, in which unarmed civilians on the Palestinian side were killed by live fire from Israeli security forces in a way that is completely contrary to international humanitarian and human rights law. And secondly, to the initiative by the US administration to declare Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and to move its embassy to that city. So the text is to address these specific recent developments rather than to reiterate again the full totality of our policy response. That would take a considerable volume.
Microphone 3.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. First of all, thanks for the committee for this balanced, in my opinion, statement. Regarding the issue to add at the end the paragraph which was proposed, although I am in favor of the interreligious interfaith dialogue between Christians, Muslim, and Jewish, and although I've been part of so kind dialogue, I don't think that it is the place here to add it. For the main reason, we don't want to bring the problem as if it is a religion one than a political one. If it was clear, I support fully, and I am ready to participate in any dialogue between Christians, Muslim, and Jewish, as we've been done a long time ago through many other institutions. So I hope our colleague who just put the motion to draw out the motion so as to keep the context of the text in its political issue. Regarding the second recommendation, which was from Archbishop from London, the Coptic, our father-in-law, father in spirit. So I don't think that we need to recognize the Palestinian Authority. There is much more power in the Palestinian state since it was recognized as a state. And at the end, the Palestinian Authority is not representing the Palestinian people. It was delivered due to the Oslo Agreement. The organization which is representing all Palestinians are the Palestinian Liberation Organizations, which already they recognized Israel as a state. So I think that committing ourselves by recognizing a Palestinian state will be much stronger than supporting the recognition of the PNA, which is Palestinian National Authority. Thank you.
Microphone 3.
Thank you, moderator. Comparing with the statement of Colombia that we have already passed it a few minutes, we have urged also in giving the authority to the General Secretary to act for further negotiations for the establishment of peace in Colombia. I would suggest that to see that also here for Palestine and Israel. And I want to ask at the same time, General Secretary, since we are in a pilgrimage of justice and peace, what you have done concerning this process of peace in Israel and Palestine. Thank you.
Microphone 2.
Carlos Pena, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. When I made the amendment, as I said, I'd hoped that it was a friendly amendment because this is nothing new. This is merely an attempt to recommit ourselves to keep the lines of communication open and to cooperate with interreligious partners. So again, it's to recommit, continuing what we've done already. Thank you.
And microphone 4.
My intervention, Obiora Ike, Globe Ethics. I find the statement very powerful and clear.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to stop you because we are at a decision-making session, and in the decision-making session, only Central Committee members are allowed to address the issue, and not the advisors during that session. So I apologize. I didn't realize that earlier myself. Okay, committee, would you like to make a comment?
Well, it's a question of controversy between the two. Perhaps I will read quickly what Mr. Carlos says, recommits to interreligious dialogue and cooperation on the pilgrimage for justice and peace with Muslim and Jewish partners through the WCC and its member churches. That was, if you didn't remember, exactly what I agreed together with Peter for this text. But this is also true that Dr. Cavas was not there yesterday, but he says that he's not against, in principle, for such a multi-dialogue, let's say, multi-religious dialogue, but not in this particular place. Perhaps we shall think in other terms how to deal with the matter so that the text will remain as it is. I need your advice. Orange now.
If you're ready to receive and approve the text, will you show your card? As is.
No.
All right. All right, microphone 1.
I'm sorry, we didn't see that the word inappropriate had been stricken with the recording.
He said they were doing it.
But it didn't show in the text.
Okay.
It's not your... but could you please try and do the exercise of trust in us? Because if once we decide that will be done. So, once again, if it is not clear, recommits the interreligious dialogue and so on. Everybody agrees with that, but one says that is not the case now in this particular text, but we have to find other ways to deal with the matter, in the sense that we shall increase this kind of preoccupation for interreligious dialogue there, but not here. That is the point. Now, I think that the House has expressed already a point of view.
But there's microphone 3. I think there's still a comment you wish to make.
Yes, because, thank you, moderator. We spoke about the interreligious dialogue. I spoke precisely about your request that the General Secretary to explore ways in which the WCC can meaningfully and effectively observe, accompany, and assist the peace situation in Palestine and Israel. I want a reaction for that.
Yes, but we haven't dealt with that yet.
Yes, but you said...
But it is in connection with...
Moderator said before for the whole document, not for exactly interreligious.
Okay.
That's why I'm...
Okay.
General Secretary, you want to just make a comment on that?
Yeah.
Well, thank you, moderator. It's an issue we deal with every day. In all these recommendations you have here, we have addressed them in the last months publicly and also in different events. For example, in a big conference organized in Cairo about the situation of Jerusalem, where I was asked to be one of the keynote speakers from the Christian side. We have the EAPI program that on a daily basis monitor and accompany, but also observe what is happening to also enable us as a fellowship, as an organization, to address the issues of peace for the people living in this situation on a daily basis. When it comes to the situation of Jerusalem, we have very strong statements, and we continue to work also with the churches in Jerusalem to address the special situation for them. This is high on our agenda, and we are reorganizing our Palestine-Israel Ecumenical Forum Advisory Group, and we are calling them for a meeting now in August, also to have plans for a wider forum to address how can we do more as churches. And as you know, we also have in the Executive Committee just expanded and reaffirmed our plans for this year and next year.
Okay. Metropolitan Gabriel?
I think with that... Oh, go ahead.
In the light of the explanations of General Secretary, do you insist? Thank you very much. Now, Madam Moderator, it's your turn.
No, I think we've already approved this statement, and you're ready to go on to the next statement. That was just the last comment.
That's wonderful. I would like to draw your attention that we have 2 more. So, no, because it's because it's contained in other, but
no, I'm just asking the interreligious dialogue not to be included. Why? Well, this is for them. It's the daily life to have dialogue with the 3. May I make a proposal to say encourages it would be completely new.
A new one?
A new one, no, yes. Encourages the local churches for the continuation of interreligious dialogue in the area. That's all. Very simple. To continue the dialogue together.
Well, there is a proposal. You, moderator, general moderator, if you accept that.
We'd already completed our action on the statement, and this reopens it. Do you want to reopen it or not? No, I think we've completed it the way it was without.
Okay.
We're attending to interreligious dialogue another way and not through the statement.
Okay. In that case, we go to the one of the two left. 50th anniversary of Poor People's Campaign in the United States of America and its continuing call. Then, Emma, could you come and read it, please?
I begin on paragraph 4 of the text. The WCC Central Committee meeting in Geneva, Switzerland on 15 to 21 of June 2018, reflecting on an anniversary of the 1968 Poor People's Campaign and its 2018 relaunch as the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, and acknowledging the continued concern for the prevalence of racism, discrimination, xenophobia, Islamophobia, and economic injustice in the United States. Reaffirms the Uppsala Declaration of 1968, as quoted above, and its relevance to the present-day crisis of poverty, rising social inequality, racial discrimination, anti-immigration, and xenophobia in the US and throughout the world. Reaffirms its support for the tearing down of all barriers of race, class, and gender by supporting its member churches in their fight against economic, political, and social policies and practices that exploit humanity, including the inhumane and stringent immigration policies that separate young children from their families. Celebrates the National Council of the Churches of Christ leadership at the ACT Now, Awaken, Confront, Transform Now, United to End Racism campaign in the USA as a sign of the coming unity of humankind. Supports the efforts of its member churches by acknowledging that ACT Now, United to End Racism movement, and the Poor People's Campaign in the USA reaffirms the gospel of Jesus Christ as expounded in Luke chapter 14, verses 16 to 18. Namely, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free. Stands with its member churches in their efforts to engage people of faith in addressing poverty, racism, xenophobia, religious discrimination, injustice, and inequality in the USA and throughout the world, and in their work towards a just and sustainable peace for all peoples.
Thank you, Emma.
Okay, this one is properly before you. I see microphone 2.
Thank you very much, and we're very grateful for this statement. There's one other historical fact I would like to add to the document that I actually think is very important, that in 1939, Central Committee member Reverend Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, sorry? Oh, I thought you were talking to me. I'm sorry, I thought he was talking to me. That in 1939, Central Committee member, he was later a Central Committee member, the Reverend Dr. Benjamin E. Mays, who was a mentor to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, convened the first racial justice summit globally through the ecumenical movement. I would hope we could add that one for 1939, and I'm happy to add the text on paper if that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes, if you make a very concrete proposal, we shall be grateful.
All right, microphone 2.
Carlos Pena, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. I stand in support of this statement. The ELCA has a long-standing commitment to justice and multiculturalism, yet we know that we have consistently fallen short of our intentions and our efforts. We are one of the least racially diverse churches in the U.S., one of the least diverse churches in the U.S., second only to the National Baptist Convention, one of the historic black churches in the U.S. I stand today in appreciation for this statement and for the ecumenical witness that it provides. All of us live in increasingly diverse cultures that have challenges related to combating racism, and we have in our past, as a global fellowship of churches, taken this work up together, as we heard in this morning's plenary. Yet the U.S. has its own unique challenges with white supremacy and racial injustice, exemplified in the history shared earlier in today's plenary. The churches in the U.S., including my own, need the accompaniment. We need the challenge, and we need the encouragement of you, the global church family, as we seek to combat racism in church and society. All of us in the U.S. and globally are called to continue to live out King's legacy in our pilgrimage of justice and peace. Thank you for this statement.
All right. Would you like to say anything else?
Just that it's a very good statement, and we're grateful for it.
All right, good.
That's
if you're
all.
good, if you're ready to receive, oh yes, one more. Okay, we got one more at microphone 1.
It's a question, moderator, to the committee. Is there any specific special reason as to why the U.S. government is not addressed in relation to these issues happening in their midst?
Oh dear. I don't know what to say. There is no specific reason, but sometimes, I mean, we have a lot of references to the government of the United States and to others, but here we thought that this is the appropriate ethos and style to have such a statement. I don't have any other explanation to give you. Maybe Peter knows better.
I doubt that very much. But what I can say is that this text is offered, or was offered, into the Public Issues Committee for consideration, especially from the perspective of some of the US church representatives who took part in our conversations. I know for a fact that the campaign referred to in this document does direct itself specifically to the policies and practices of the US government in relation to the matters that are described here. And the purpose of this text is to offer support from the perspective of the global ecumenical family for the efforts taken by churches and the ecumenical bodies in the United States to do exactly that, to address themselves to the government with regard to its policies and practices.
Okay, so if you're ready to receive and approve this statement, will you show your cards? Okay, thank you. Oh, okay, one more concern over here at microphone 1.
That's a question. My name is Eddie Alleman from the Reformed Church in America. And the statement, you know, we are going through, in the U.S. right now with the immigration policies and all that, you know, the separation of families is a big issue. And, you know, my question is, why are we mentioning anything like that? Is that on the policy? I think it's mentioned. On the statement?
Could I tell you that there is mentioned, and quite clearly, but in the first part of the statement, and also in the second action point.
Okay.
So if you look again at it, you will discover that your answer is there.
All right.
And thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's also in the reaffirm section. So. One more time. All right. If you receive and approve this statement, show your cards. Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, one more. Let's do one more.
Moderator, allow me to give the good news. This is the last point on, because we are tired now. But we have, you know, I would like to say only one thing, that because of Statute of Jerusalem, we consider that we must say something about the whole situation of Christians in the Middle East. That's why it came the second paper, which is in front of you, and it is not necessarily for action. But Peter will give some more explanations. That's why the title of the paper is Christian Presence in the Middle East. So could you...
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This text is generated as an attempt to respond to one of those issues that was raised from the floor for attention by Public Issues Committee. And within the time available, my colleagues did their best to consult with different representatives from the region, from different parts of the region, in order to present a text for possible action. But it also became apparent to Public Issues Committee in the last stages of our time together and our conversations that there were other perspectives from the region that were not perhaps fully encompassed or reflected in the appropriate, let's say, positive orientation. Whilst those voices did not wish to stand in the way of the adoption of this text, but did appeal for wider consultation in future initiatives. So rather than insisting from our side that this text be presented for action by the Central Committee, the proposal from the Public Issues Committee is to leave it in your gift as the House of the Central Committee as to whether to act upon this text now or whether to refer it to the Executive Committee meeting in November this year for action at that time and to allow for wider consultation and a more comprehensive text.
So, was it clear what Peter said?
All right, we do have some comments. Microphone 3.
It is clear, but I think that there is some misunderstanding here. The issue of the Christians in the Middle East was proposed to the Public Issue Committee from the floor so as to deal with it, and it was approved to deal with it, and I don't know why now you are coming back asking us not to take action on it, but to refer it to the Executive Committee. Nevertheless, I am going to go a little bit in this document as it was presented to us. Whatever it will happen, it will, if you approve or you will refer it back to the Executive Committees. My preference is that we will approve it here. I have 2 small comments, except if you want to read it first and then to say my comments, it's up to the moderator.
Well, we can read it, of course, but you know, the purpose of this session was to finish as soon as possible, and at the Executive Committee, we should have a more comprehensive, more comprehensible, and larger, you know, content-wise text. But that's why we couldn't deal with that in depth, as it were.
Then give us the opportunity to speak about some of our amendments or proposals so as it will be taken into consideration when we discussed somewhere else. Between point number 4 and 5, there is a completely different issues. Why we are asking democracy, equal citizenship, and so on, only the issue of Syria, and we regret that in Iraq. Is because Iraq is occupied with the United States? I think that both of them and both people are suffering the same issue. We are also asking for democratization in Iraq as it is in Syria. So I hope that number 5 and number 4 will be in consistence with each other. My last point is about number 6. I think that we have to be very clear that not only to ask the Turkish government to resume negotiations, but to withdraw from the occupied part of the island. Withdrawal from the occupied part is the main issue which Cypriots as Christians in the region are requesting, and not only negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now the point is that we have to choose between the 2 positions. We wanted to put, in fact, to the House, either we refer it to the Executive Committee to have a better statement, And what Dr. Kavas said now, it demonstrates that our idea is much better. So I think, Madam Moderator, could you...
Yeah, let's hear from microphone 4, and then we can get a feeling from the House.
Thank you, Metropolitan. Thank you, Peter, for taking that on. I would totally agree with Dr. Kawas that we need at least to submit something from this Central Committee, and then at the end we might say there is a need to have a more elaborative statement that might come from the Executive Committee, but we can't really leave Syria and Iraq and the Middle East and what they are suffering out of what is happening in the Central Committee. That's really out of question. This is really not good. Because as if we are forgetting these people and we are looking at all other countries with all due respect, but we are not looking at this country.
Okay, you raised that question, and we are now in the decision making.
Yes.
And I need some advice from the moderator and how we are going to,
let me let
tackle that, because in terms of
right.
time, when are we going to read or something?
Right.
Otherwise, if we don't have a concrete written proposal, then it's difficult now to convene the whole committee and do something.
Let's have General Secretary comment and also then Moderator Agnes comment.
Okay. Thank you for this proposal. I think it is important and even urgent that the Central Committee, when it meets only every second year, to address this very special situation for people both in Syria and Iraq, but also particularly for our own churches. We have a lot of involvement in relationship to them, and we want to have this also as a basis for our involvement today, but also in the coming months. So I don't see why it has to be either or. It can be both a statement coming from here, and we'll follow up in the Executive Committee as well.
I think.
So our proposal would be that since there were not so many amendments in paragraph 6 and what was also referred to between paragraph 4 and 5, if a small committee of the PI, public issues, could look at it over break, and then we have, and you can include then an action requesting a further in-depth document from the Executive Committee.
Thank you.
Okay,
yes,
agreed. If everybody agrees, that means we are thinking of that.
I think we can solve the problem if we add another one paragraph as 8 in 2 lines to say that we are very sensitive of protecting political rights, human rights, and financial rights of the people living there, as everybody is an image of God. So when they protect the political rights and the human rights of the people living there, then we protect also the Christians. Thank you.
Very good, but try to write down this and give to Peter during the coffee break, please, so that we shall see the depth of your ideas. Now, moderator, I think...
There's another request at microphone 4.
Yes.
Thank you, moderator. As I read this document, I had a feeling that it was a very general and hastily written document. I think, to be fair to our churches, our people, and to the people in the region, it has to be a better thought document. So I would appreciate any solution that you propose to this document, and would support the idea of a statement coming in November during the Executive Committee. Thank you.
All right, microphone 3.
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. I think that it's not the issue of issuing statements. It's the issue of issuing strong statements in which it will have everything inside it. So my concrete proposal is that the General Secretary will send a letter, or it will be a press release, that the Central Committee discuss the issue of the Central Committee and refer to the upcoming Executive Committee to have a full text on that issue. You understood what was my motion, Your Eminence?
To the Executive. To the Executive, that means. Okay, in that case, I think you came with the same idea like me to propose that the executive committee should...
Difficult, Your Eminence, to have ideas like you. We can do that.
You behave very well today. Congratulations. God bless you. So, now, moderator, I think that concludes our report with our gratitude, and allow me to thank Peter Proof and everyone, and also the team. There is somebody else.
4. Go ahead. Theodora, go ahead.
No, it's,
yes.
Oh, no, it's George. Okay, go ahead. Yes, thank you.
Well, I mean, based on, Eminence, I know you love harmony, and in this sense, I will help you.
Good point.
The critique of, or the wish of Dr. Kawas was to add something about democratization in Syria, and there is a place in Iraq, and there is a place for that. So to add the word democracy on the fourth line of paragraph 4, a shared narrative for peace, democracy, and reconciliation in the country. And then this critique would be addressed, and Dr. Kawas would not have any reservation against this formulation, I hope. Then in terms of Cyprus and Turkey, the issue of addressing the Turkish government to withdraw from Cyprus could be put in a strong statement written and prepared by the executive committee. So we could issue this statement here with a very minor addition, and have another statement if there is need to be done by the executive committee as well.
General Secretary is going to say something. Go ahead.
I really hope that this leads to a statement. On Monday, I'm representing all of you in a big conference here in Geneva to discuss citizenship and civil rights for religious groups. I really am very helped if you make a statement about this now, and I'm very embarrassed if you don't, since we raised the issue.
Very good. Now, moderator, allow me to say this. We are ready to have a look at the text of this statement immediately during the coffee break, but it could not be necessary to come back and read it. Please trust us on this condition. There should be Dr. Kavas, the 2 people from the Middle East, and our staff, Peter Proof, and some of our committee members, so that we shall reach a conclusion. So if you agree with that, then we come out with a statement, and trust us that we shall write something convenient to everyone.
All right, it looks like a lot of good orange cards, so I think you have totally received the agreement to proceed in that way.
In that case, thank you, Madam Moderator. That concludes our report.
So one last thing, and now truly, if you'll receive and approve the entire report from the Public Issues Committee, would you show your cards? All right, thank you. There is a comment at microphone 1.
Thank you, moderator. Michel Charbonnier, Valdesian Church from Italy, speak English. A question of clarification. We heard in the midterm report of the Public Issues Committee that there was a proposal for a document on racism, xenophobia, and death in the Mediterranean Sea. And now I don't see that not even acknowledged in the final report. So I perfectly understand if there was no time to produce a full-fledged document, but I think it should be at least acknowledged. And actually, I would be very embarrassed and very worried if the World Council of Churches didn't even deem necessary to take any kind of action about that. There's a long list of actions put forward for
for the following times. I think that this should be in that list. Thank you.
Thank you. Could somebody from the committee comment on that? Would you? Because it really is such a very important issue. If Peter would comment.
Yeah, I regret that the issue wasn't included in the list of issues mentioned. I think it's perhaps not necessary to return with a revised report, but we can simply note it in the minutes and include the reference appropriately with the stipulation that it be referred to the General Secretary for further action. But I wouldn't want this House to be under the misapprehension that nothing has been done by the World Council of Churches in relation to this matter. On the contrary, the General Secretary and the staff have been extremely engaged in addressing this issue, together also with our counterparts in the Vatican. We will be holding a major conference later this year on addressing issues pertaining to the migrant crisis. And there is quite a long list of statements and communications that have been issued by the WCC in relation to this matter. So please don't think we are starting from scratch on this matter. Quite the contrary.
So, yeah, all right, microphone one.
I'm really sorry, moderator, but if that's the case, the report itself could reference that, even though we're not proposing a new statement, and ought to.
Thank you. Yes, well, yes, let's try to do that. All right, I'm going to propose that we return in 20 minutes rather than 30, so that we can begin to move on to the action items from the other committees. So please return in 19 minutes. See you at 4:20.